one of the breaches of many that you talked about was the Capital One breach, and you noted that you talked quite a bit about an amateur, and I believe her name was Erratic.
That's right.
Yep, breaching essentially their cloud space, and so now we've got, I mean, anybody who has picked up a paper or looked at a website now knows that the nation state threat is significant, right? And it's a real threat. But then you're talking about erratic, which, I don't know, maybe we'd call that an amateur threat, but still a lot of damage was done. How should companies prepare differently for both erratic and that nation state sophisticated threat, if that makes sense?
So there's a saying in the security community, and that's attacks only get better. And going back 20 years ago, we had to deal with the lone amateurs that would write worms like Code Red, Nimda, SQL Slinger,
Script
kiddies,
exactly. Yep.
reusing all of that, and they'd be very effective. And I think what we've learned in the world is that all those attackers still don't go away, right? We are working on defending against organized cybercriminals. We are working on defending against foreign nation state adversaries, but the amateurs have not gone away. And actually, just looking at the state of cloud security, for a single lone ex-Amazon employee to have leveraged a server-side request forgery vulnerability and a misconfiguration in a web application firewall to single-handedly steal 100 million credit applications probably tells us something about the state of cloud security as compared to a bunch of other areas, right? So I think we need to have probably more defenses in the area of cloud security and more maturity there to just do better against the amateurs, let alone the organized cybercriminals or nation states.
Yeah,
now, this is probably where I have some disagreements with Neil, because I think when there's a breach in cloud security, when there's anything related to a cloud security, we immediately hear about it, right? Everybody knows about the S3 bucket that was open to the public and there was some information on it. Mm-hmm. Okay. I have worked at companies where it's not like the firewalls. Now everybody feels super secure and confident behind firewalls. But I got to tell you, a lot of these firewalls over time, I mean, on day one, these firewalls are perfect and they're clean, and they know what access. But over the years, there's a bunch of rules that nobody knows what they're for. And the other aspect of it is oftentimes, there's a lot of times there's errors in the firewall rules. And these rules, what you think you're actually doing is not exactly, the rule is not exactly either. It's applied wrong, it's applied incorrect. I mean, there's just a lot of different things. So I'm personally, I probably feel more secure running my workloads in an AWS environment, for example, or in a Google environment. If nothing else, I feel like at least the core foundation, a Google or an Amazon, they can afford a lot more security application engineers than I can inside any company, right? So I have a confidence that the core infrastructure is being protected a lot more than any single company can do. Now, is like a public cloud far more new? And it's one thing, we've been configuring Cisco firewalls forever, to pick on Cisco or picking any of your favorite firewalls. We've been doing that for a very, very long time, right? Clearly, we're still going through the maturity process, but I don't necessarily buy into, by default, that a public cloud would be less secure than a hosted environment. If anything, I think when things happen in a private environment, I don't think it's as noteworthy, and it doesn't create the same level of vibrations that a public cloud does. What do you think of that, Neil?
I do. I think that's great.
What a nice guy.
On that. So, I think that whether you're in the cloud or you're on premise, there is a saying, right? It's there's an acronym here, KISS, right? Keep it simple, stupid. And I think whether you're in the cloud or whether you're on premise, if you've got a firewall with thousands of rules, it's going to be very hard for anybody to really understand and reason about its security. So complexity is the enemy of security, irrespective of whether you're in the cloud or you're on premise. Now, where I agree with Moudy is that the cloud providers can invest a lot more in security than most typical on-premise data centers can. And security is one of those areas where if you invest a lot of capital, you do it once, you get it right, we can get to a state where cloud security deployments and especially on the infrastructure side are better. But I think that one of the challenges in the cloud environment is that companies are still responsible for their application level security and above. And you can mess that up just as easily in the cloud as you can on premise. And I think the challenge is that, a lot of these cloud environments are newer and there just isn't as much expertise. So we need to have more expertise, and that can help us get to a better state. I do think that if I look at some cloud providers, they do provide more tools and more scanning at the application level than other clouds. So choose your cloud carefully.
And that's also just back to the seatbelt analogy. I think that cloud providers are providing the seatbelt. Are the customers actually putting it on and wearing it and applying it? There's definitely a lot of scanning, like really good scanning tools. They can confirm and see, help you understand your security groups, help you understand, the structure, the overall structure and the architecture. The question is, again, as a customer, you have to take advantage of those tools, run them, and actually do something about them. There's always the problem with, first you got to know the problem, and then it's like, okay, now I know this thing. What am I going to do about it? Do I prioritize it, or do I just kind of keep it, ignore it, or it sits in the backlog?
Yeah, you got to actually go do something about it.
We saw with Target, right? Like you have to, there's things we're firing off in the Target breach. This is the saddest thing is like you have tools that are actually telling you, hey, I think there's something going on here. And whether it's too much noise, and again, I think we all have those same problems in different environments. But yeah, taking action is really important.
Yeah, Moudy brings a great example. In the Target case, right, they had deployed FireEye. They had paid like $1.6 million for a whole bunch of FireEye sensors just 6 months before they experienced the breach. And those sensors were alerting. Their team in India was seeing a lot of malware binaries. The categorizations were generic, but there were so many alerts and they were lost in enough noise that by the time they got escalated to the US-based team, they just couldn't be acted on fast enough. So I think there's a lot of issues. In addition to quote unquote using the seatbelts, you've got to make sure that the signal that you're getting from it is high fidelity enough. Moudy had made a comment earlier about half invested and half baked security initiatives. What can happen is that if you deploy a security tool and you don't put enough investment into tuning it properly, great, you may actually get a false sense of security because it's deployed, but not in a high fidelity enough of fashion that you can contain attacks that occur and that get actually reported on by the tools.
Yeah, it's not enough to have the technology and to deploy the tool, but you actually have to do something with it, to everybody's point, I believe. So.